to Amateur Redneck Workshop. I'm Harold, and the subject of today's video is wiring up a phase converter. We're going to go from single phase to three phase because my belt grinder motor did a Roman candle thing and burned out. Okay, so I was talking to Chuck Bomarito, and somehow we got around to the fact that I've got a brand new three-phase 1-horse motor that's never been used for anything, and he suggested I get a phase converter and put it on there because of all the things you can do, like variable speed and all that sort of thing. Now this is not the best choice probably, because I had a 2-horsepower motor on there that was running 3,400 RPM, and I'm about to go to a 1-horse motor running 1750. So it'll be half the horsepower and half the speed, which means half as much grinder really. But the idea of playing with a phase converter, and I've never played with one before, that's what tempted me to go ahead and do it. And he said, he says, you can get a phase converter a lot cheaper than you can buy a 2-horsepower motor, and he's right. I did. I got it all total for about, I don't know, $108. I got one big enough to do a 2-horse motor, even though I've only got a 1-horse right now. So that lays into the plan there. You know, I can use it for other things later if I get, or I can use it with a bigger motor if I come across one. All right. And in other news, today was the steel challenge, and I didn't do better than last month. I was 2 seconds slower. I was 70 seconds this time instead of in the 60s, and I'd really hoped to be in the 60s, but I got out there, and on stage 1 I missed twice, which means I had to eat a 3-second penalty. Without having to eat that 3-second penalty, I would have beat last month's score. Tough break, huh? Alright, well, let's get on with the project. So I go into the editor to reply to the comments I haven't replied to yet, and you see all those little red locks. You see those? They're showing up all over the place through all kind of things. More red locks, more. I didn't do that. It's got to be YouTube putting red locks on my comments. So there you go. There's some stuff there 2 years old, not replied to, but I can't do it. Red locks. I don't understand why that is. As far as I know, this is coming to me from Bruno Martini of the Engineered 3D channel, and I have no idea what's in it, but I'm going to find out. The FedEx guy drove up while I was out edging the grass. You know, lawn care had to come first around here, and had him put it in the mailbox. It says Shars on the box. Let's see what's in it. There's something in it. I know what that is. That's a collet holder. I don't know if you guys can see it or not. That's what it is. That's a collet holder. Fasten it against the wall here or against something, and stack it full of collets. Thank you, Bruno. That's really nice. Appreciate it. Alright, now this inverter type phase converter is sold on Amazon as My Sweetie. And no, I'm not getting all affectionate over an inverter type phase converter. It's just, that's the brand name they chose. But they sell this thing under a dozen different brand names. And what counts is the model number there, which is XSY AT1. You can see it right there. It says here that it's a single phase 220 volt AC to somewhere on there it tells you current output 3-phase. Okay, anyway, it takes in single phase 220 volt AC and puts out three phase 220 volt. Alright, and it comes with this nice little booklet, which I've noticed whatever brand that you're buying, they've all got this same booklet. And you look in here for your model, and this is the instructions for the model AT1. But the booklet has the instructions for the AT4, the AT2, the AT3, etc. A whole bunch of different models. It's got wiring diagrams for a whole bunch of different models. But the only one we're interested in is the AT1. So we'll open the little booger up here and look inside at the wires. And we're going to bring the power in through this little rubber thing right here. Probably not the best thing in the world, but that's where it comes in at. Alright, let me reposition the camera. Now the reason that I'm making this video is because I looked at a whole bunch of phase converter and three-phase wiring videos on YouTube, and whereas they were all maybe really good, each one of them had some aspect that was where they left you hanging or didn't show you something. I saw one where they showed running the wires from here to the motor. It was obviously a factory video. It was probably in 4K. It was beautiful, and they wired up the phase converter. They sorted all the wires of the motor. Now they weren't doing any talking, they were doing it by example. And then they pulled the three wires through the little strain relief hole in the side of the motor, and then all of a sudden they're putting the cap on it. And you didn't see where they put those three wires. And some of the people who viewed the video left a remark with them that wasn't very good. You know, they were kind of put out, and the guys, yeah, we know that a piece of the video got lost. But they didn't do anything about it. You know, I mean, it would have been perfect if they just went back and put in the missing piece. You know, redid it, something. Instead of just saying, yeah, we realize there's a piece left out, and then just leaving the video there is almost good for you know, for the viewer. Alright, enough of that. No more rant. So what we got here, we're going to bring in the 220 volts. I'm assuming this to be the earth wire because it doesn't have any other label on it. Earth, ground, whatever you're going to call it. And these two are the hot wire. And this one's labeled neutral and this is labeled line 1. And I can only figure that that's got to be because, you know, somewhere it's the same little circuit board maybe is used for 120 volts. I don't know. I don't know why they're labeled like that, but it's the way it is. Okay? And it, and the way I'm calling it there, matches up with this wiring right here. So we're going to get it right. They're not necessarily in that exact order, but we're going to get it right. So what I have on the wire is I have lugs on it, and I'm going to shove it through this little rubber gland here and connect it, and then I'll bring the camera back and show you where I've connected it. I've squeezed a nice ring onto each of these wires so that you know, it won't come loose to have 220 volts floating around. Alright, so I wired it up green and white and black in that order. We know the green's the ground all the time, and you can check it out by, you know, using a continuity meter to see that it's on the other end of the plug. Now before we get started doing this, I'd like to point out that I'm not a licensed electrician in any place in the world. Not in this state or your territory or whatever. And you would be well advised to hire a competent electrician to do this work for you. Okay? Now then, we got that said, we'll move on to hooking up the wires that go from the converter to the motor. Now if you'll notice here, the next three connections are labeled U, V, W. Alright? So all I have to do is keep track of which wire is U, which is V, and which is W. Which is easy to do because I've got three different colors of wire here. And I've put terminals on the ends of those just to keep it neat. Okay, so I'll hook them up, and then I'll bring you back to get a look at that. Alright, this motor has a tag on the side of it here that shows how to wire it. This is for what they call low voltage and what they call high voltage. Okay, so I've made a copy of that, blown it up real big so we can look at it real easy. Move the camera around for you to see that. So after criticizing those guys on YouTube for leaving out a part of their video, I was editing this and discovered that I left out a part of the video. Here we go. Here's the 3 wires hooked up to the UVW. White's on U, green's on V, and black is on W. And let me lift this in where you see in there. There you are. They're all neatly hooked on with rings on the end so they don't come off. Alright, now then we'll get on with the rest of it. Now on YouTube, most of the motors that they were wiring up were 9-wire motors. And if you look at this copy that I made of the plate that's on the motor, this is a 12-wire motor. Now on the 9-wire motors, you hook up U, V, W to 1, 2, 3 like that, and you tie 4, 5, and 6 together. But that's not the way this one goes. This is a 12-wire motor, so I hooked up U to 1 and 7, V to 2 and 8, W to 3 and 9. And then I hooked up 4 and 10 together, 5 and 11, and 6 and 12. I wired them all together in the little box in the motor. And I used those wire nuts to put everything together. So I guess when you got something on the side of the motor that says do it like this, you ought to do it like that. I'm not sure if you can see it or not, but this white wire is number 2. See if I can zoom in just a little bit closer. If you can see the number on it, then that's great, and if you can't, well, I guess that'll have to be great too. That's about as good as I get my camera close to it. All of them are numbered like that, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put, say, 1 and 7 and the U wire all into one spot, put a wire nut on them. Alright, and this is not the permanent wiring that I'm going to use on this thing, because this wire only has 4 wires in it, and 3 wires in it, and I really need 4. Okay, I need the U, V, W, and 1 for the ground. Alright, hang loose until I wired them together. Alright, I've taken wire nuts and I've wired it just exactly the way the diagram on the side of the motor shows. Alright, I plugged it in and it came up saying F442. We'll have to double check the information, but it's right now it's got an indicator light saying it's stopped, and it's set to go forward if I tell it to run. Now there's tuning and all sorts of things like that in this controller. But I'm going to turn this little thing down, this rheostat down really low, and I'm going to punch the run button, and we'll see if this thing catches on fire or if it runs. Alright, here we go. Hold your breath and cross your fingers. And guess what's happening? The motor is running. Look at that. Little booger's just running right along. I must have done something right. Alright, so as you can see, we've got a display, forward and reverse button, program, function and data save, up, down, run, stop. And this is the potentiometer that changes the frequency. All that is probably going to work just right here. And the hardest thing, of course, is getting that little tachometer there to read while I hold it and make a video. It's just darn hard to get it lined up right. So I think maybe I've got it propped up good, and we'll turn this thing on and vary the RPMs and see if it reads in particularly right range. Alright, so turn it on. And of course I got a 0. I would have. Alright, there we are. 1768 RPMs at 59 Hertz. And it'll crank on up 1900 RPMs. We can slow it down considerably. That's running 1453, 1293, 1156. These are, I guess, in case you need that kind of speed adjustment. Okay? And if you push the forward reverse button, it comes to a stop and heads the other way. And there we go. So, good deal, huh? Alright. Now, as for the programming on it, there's a lot of parameters that it chooses, like how fast to start up and how fast to slow down and stop, and what's the normal hertz for starting up, and I haven't yet figured out exactly how to get the keyboard to work right for me. So I'm not going to do any tuning on it right here. We'll have to save that for a later video. But hopefully I've made a reasonable video that you can see what I did, and we'll try to go with that, you know. You guys that are pros or whatever, if you see something I did wrong, please by all means let me know. Well, Boudreaux was going down Crawfish Bayou there in his boat, and he come along and he saw this fishing camp on fire. And he called up the fire station, and he told them, oh, you need to get out here and put out this fire and stuff. And yeah, at the fire station, well, Mr. Boudreaux, he says, first thing I got to know, he says, is how do I get there? Boudreaux thought on it a second. He says, ain't you guys still got that big red truck? Well, that's all, folks. Y'all try to subscribe if you're not already a subscriber. Leave a comment if you got something to say. And above all, remember, keep on keeping on. Bye now.